Welcome back to Top Shelf EDU. I'm your host, Aaron Lee. Today, I'm joined by Adison Grady, who just completed her first year at Simon Fraser University. Welcome, Addison.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about this. So let's start with your program at SFU. What are you studying, and why did you choose SFU for this field specifically?
So I'm currently studying criminology, and I chose SFU because it was the only school really in BC that had a criminology program, and staying in BC was something that I personally wanted to do. I know they had a lot of great criminology schools in Ontario, but I lived in the north for like most of my life, so I kind of didn't want to go out in the cold, so I picked SFU mainly for that reason, just to stay in BC. And I heard that it was also a great criminology program as well.
Okay. And throughout your first year, what's been your academic experience like at SFU? And it compared to what you thought it would be like going in?
It's actually pretty similar to what I like heard from like the grapevine about like what university life was like. Everybody kind of tells you that there's so much work that you have to do and that the workload is like really extreme. And so I think just knowing that going in, like I actually wasn't as like shocked to how much work there was supposed that I had compared to what I thought was going to be. I definitely would say it's a lot more work than high school typically, but I found it actually pretty enjoyable, like just going to classes for like 3 hours a day per lecture and then just studying on my own time. And the program actually, I felt like this for my first year, everybody kinda tells you for your first year that you don't get to do, like, any, like, specific courses, like, it's all just general, but I found that my first year in my program, I actually got to do a lot of criminology specific classes, which just kind of further supported my, like, knowledge of knowing that I wanted to do criminology for my major.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Not only that you were prepared for the workload that was coming ahead to you, but also that you were able to start studying those core courses for your major criminology. Because as we all know, when you're studying something that you really enjoy, you're going to do better in, and that's what students really look forward to as they start their majors. Now, you mentioned that you're in lectures. What other types of classes are there? Are they strictly lectures? Do you have more discussion based? Is there hands-on learning? What other types of classes are there that you're taking?
So I know it depends on the program that you're in, but currently for like my first year at criminology or doing criminology, it was specifically like I had I had a 3 hour lecture for every week for each class, or I had a 2 hour lecture and then we had an hour of like tutorial where you're in a smaller group setting, like around 15 students, and you're kind of discussing that week's material in further detail together. Um, I would say most of my classes, I would say 4 had tutorials, and then one of them, like my psychology classes, were always just 3-hour lectures with no tutorial. But I know other programs have, like, labs, but I haven't been able to do, like, a lab or anything like that quite yet.
Okay. Now, when you're in the lecture, are those lectures, are they looking for participation from the students, or is it more sitting there listening to the professor? And do you actually need to show up for a lot of those lectures?
It really depends on the professor and what their teaching style is like. I would say most of mine all my professors are pretty passionate about all the things that they're talking about and their topics, so they all like to hear from other people, especially, like, younger demographics when it comes to, I think, like, criminology, like, crime and, like, the history of crime, like, kinda has, like, controversial subtopics, so they kinda like to hear from younger demographics about, like, what their opinion on, like, sentencings are and, like, stuff like that. So, I definitely found that a lot of the teach our professors would ask questions throughout the classes. I would say my, like, 3-hour lectures, like, my psychology classes, the ones that are just the lectures aren't as, like, engaging where they just ask you questions, but the other ones were quite engaging.
Okay. Now, in terms of your professors or your TAs, are they approachable? So if you need extra help, how do you seek extra help, and is it easily accessed?
Yeah, so I would say that your TA is the first, like, line to go to. you see your TA, especially if you have a tutorial every week in tutorial, and it's just like a group of 15 people. And all the TAs that I had were super nice, and I was really easily able to go up to them during tutorial. But it's kind of harder to reach out to your professor. You can always ask, they always give you like, because they're 3-hour classes, like, breaks in between, and people will just like line up and go talk to the professor, and the professor's always willing to talk to you. So it kind of depends on the professor, but I would say every professor is pretty approachable at SFU for criminology. And you just have to go walk up and talk to them, or you could go to their office hours. They typically have like an hour to 2 hours a week specific for your class specifically, so I would just drop in for office hours if I needed to talk to them, but my TA, I talk to them during tutorial or I just email them.
Okay. Now, being a criminology student, I'm not sure, but are there any like co-op or internship or even research positions that are available to you as a student there within your first year? And if not, when do those opportunities generally come available?
Yeah, so for co-op, I haven't fully looked into that yet because they definitely haven't offered them for first year students, or not that I'm aware of. But for any program that's in the arts, like a co-op's not mandatory compared to if like you're in engineering or something. So those are kind of things that you apply, I would say, for your second, third, fourth year. And I feel like it's on a first come, first serve or like a priority basis. I'm not entirely sure what they are, like what you would do at those programs, because I just in my first year, so they're not kind of really on my radar quite yet. I'll do them probably 3rd or 4th year. But I did, like, check, and I feel like every single program has a co-op, or they also have, like, different, like, study abroads. I know the criminology program in, like, the summer, I couldn't attend to it, but they went to, I believe, Switzerland or Sweden. I think it was Sweden, and they have, like, different courses that they do there for the summer.
Okay, that's really interesting. Is that something that you'll be looking forward to maybe in the next few years then?
Yeah, like, if it works out with my, like, swim schedule, then I would definitely be able to do that, yeah.
Okay. What's something that about SFU that generally surprised you when you got onto campus? And are there any traditions or events that really stand out or unique?
I would say that what surprised me is, like, it's pretty a livable, I would say it was pretty livable for me to live on campus, like, in the sense where, I feel like everybody kinda just tells you, like, "Oh, it's just you're on a mountain and you can't really do anything up there," but there's a lot of stuff to do up there. It's actually very beautiful when it's not raining. It does rain a lot, but when it's not raining, like, you can see the the mountains and the snow on top of the mountains, and there's, like, grocery markets and, like, restaurants on campus, so it's a very livable place to live. And then, I would say that there's also a lot of, like, games, like, home games that they have, and they always have posters for them, so it definitely has a very engaging community because 'cause we're also all on that mountain, so I think we all just kind of, like, live together and just know that we're all living in the same place, and we can't, like, really, it's kinda a little bit harder to access, like, your nearest Walmart because you are on a higher elevation, so I think we just all learn how to live together, which is pretty, it's a pretty good community.
Okay. Now, do most first year students, do they live on campus or is it more of a commuting campus where people live off and commute on?
I would say that it's pretty, the first year would definitely be more people living on campus. I know a lot of people who do go to SFU are from, like, the Burnaby, like, Vancouver area, so they could technically drive, but a lot of them still do live on campus just because it's easier. But I do think, like, as the years go on, people just they'll find a different place to live off campus, but I would say everybody that I talked to lived in a campus building, so I would say first year is definitely people who live on campus.
Okay. Now, how are the residents at SFU? Are they nice? How did that transition go when you first moved on campus?
I actually, like, I loved my dorm rooms at SFU. They were all really new. They're building another building right now. I was definitely a little bit worried 'cause, I mean, I did board at a boarding school for 3 years beforehand, so I did already have that prior experience, but in that room, I did have a private bathroom, so I was kind of nervous about moving to a place that had shared bathrooms, but every room nobody's allowed to have a roommate on at SFU actually, unless you're in, like, the townhouses, so every room's a singular room, which I, like, personally like just because I also had a roommate for the past 3 years at my old high school, so I was kind of excited about just having my own space for a little while. And it also, like, didn't give me FOMO because other people it's not like anybody else had a roommate, so I wasn't, like, feeling left out in that department, so everybody has their own single room. It's a pretty spacious room, and then there's, like it kinda depends on the building, but probably, like, the ones that 1st and 2nd years would get and the one that I'm going to for my 1st and 2nd year, there's, like, 16 individual bathrooms on each floor, so they're not communal, which is really nice.
Okay, so that's good to know. So if you're going to SFU, you do get your own bedroom.
Mhm.
And so that's going to be really important as well for people that like to meet new people, but like to have their own space as well. So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah, and there's, like and then on each floor, there's also, like, a little kitchen and also a community area with a TV and couches, so it's also, like, you kinda get both 2 in 1. You get your own space, but then you also get your community space on each floor.
Okay, that's great. Now, in terms of the social scene at SFU, is there a lot of clubs or intramurals or organizations that people can get involved with to meet new people?
Yeah, so they're at the beginning of each semester, they always have their club fairs out in this, like, big I don't know how to explain it. It's this big concrete pad that we kinda have there. It looks nice, but, it's just filled with a bunch of clubs. I didn't I didn't personally join a club this past year just because I wanted to focus more on school, but I know this upcoming year I'm going to join, like, a criminology club, but they have a club for, like, every different niche that's out there, so that's a plus, and then also they have different intramurals and then they have, like, your varsity sports teams as well, and, yeah, I did, like, Pilates all throughout the year and, like, met a bunch of different people, and then they also have a fitness center, which I went to, like, every day, so, you can definitely meet a lot of people through those, if you're not, like, on a varsity team, which I'm not, so I definitely met a lot of people through that, so if people, like, were worried that they're not on a varsity team, like, they wouldn't have to feel worried about that.
Okay. Now, for those students that are considering SFU, what type of student do you think would thrive at SFU? And on the flip side, who might struggle in the environment or the culture there?
I would say, like, um it definitely but I feel like it's just kind of all schools. It's definitely a lot of work. It kinda depends on what type of student you are. If you are someone who, like, wants to do really, really well, then you do have to expect that you are going to be doing homework or studying, like, for at least, like, 3 to 4 hours a day. That's what I found myself doing. But I would actually say that it's not as, like, a scary environment as maybe, like, a more higher prestigious school might seem like it would be. So I think if you're wanna go to university, but, like, don't want to feel like you have to, like, do your best all the time, then it's actually a pretty good school to go to do that. I knew a lot of people who, like, didn't really care how well they were gonna do, but still, like, thrived in that environment, so it's kinda like you kinda can do both. If you don't care how well you do, then I think it's a great school, and if you do wanna try, like, really hard and get, like, those A's, then it's also a good school to do that 'cause, you're also able to 'cause it's smaller, get that, like, one-on-one with your professors and TAs to get you up there.
Okay. That's really good to know. What's something that you wish you knew before starting at SFU?
Um I think about, specifically for, like, criminology, and probably also, like, other arts is how many, like, papers you have to write. I never really had to write that many papers in high school, but you definitely they're just kinda, like, second nature to me at this point, like, if you're expected to write, like, a five-page paper, then you just kinda do it, but that was definitely a learning curve, especially when I did like 5 core classes. I didn't do any electives this past year. I just did all core. So having to do 5 for each semester and then like every class probably had like 3 papers and, like, one of them was a big final one. Having, like, 15 papers in 1 semester definitely felt like a lot to me when I only probably did, like, 2 during high school, but so I would definitely say, that was a big surprise to me, but you do, like, learn how to do it, and now it's to a point where, yeah, it's second nature to expect to do a bunch of papers.
Yeah, that would be a big adjustment going from 1 or 2 papers to 15 in a class, so, yeah, that would be a big jump for sure. What have you found in terms of the assessments and whether it's, how much they're worth, whether it's the midterm or the final? Because when I'm speaking with alumni and students, that's one of the things that they often mention is it's how heavily the assessments are weighted compared to high school, and also how there's no flexibility in terms of handing things in late. Can you talk about your experience in your first year there?
Yeah, so definitely I felt like, yeah, in high school, there wasn't like a set syllabus that tells you like what everything's worth. You kind of just get your grade at the end of the year and you kind of accept it. But I definitely like how they give you a syllabus for university and like tell you like what's what. But I would typically find like if I had a midterm or a final, which I typically had like both, each of them was 30 or 35, and then I'd have like a paper that was 20 to like 30, and then the other 10 was tutorial participation or attendance. If you didn't have tutorial, then my professor would take attendance. So 10 of it is like attendance, and then the 90 is on assessments. And it kind of just depends on how what class you're in, if you have quizzes or not, because then if you have a bunch of quizzes, then that kind of brings the midterm and final grade down, and if you have more papers, then those can be higher than your midterms. It kinda depends on the class, but definitely your papers and your midterms and finals are where you're gonna see a really big chunk of where your grade comes from.
Okay. Now, for anybody that's considering applying to SFU, what's some piece of advice that you may give them in terms of whether it's to think about SFU comparing to another school? What's something that you would have them think about?
I would say that I think, like, SFU is kinda like the underdog where, like, we do get compared to UBC a lot, but I do think we're 2 different schools, and I applied to UBC and I got in, but I chose SFU because of the great criminology program they had. So, I think that just kind of compares to, like, what you wanna do. If you know a school has a great program, like a criminology program at SFU, then I would say go for it because also, like I said, all the professors from my experience at SFU that I've had are really passionate about what they're teaching, and because they're like we're a smaller school, you get to have more of those one-on-ones with your teacher and or your prof and your TAs, and, they also because of that, they also make all those lectures that seem really long on paper, like you see, "Oh, I have a 3-hour lecture." They make because they're so engaging, make those lectures go by really quickly. So I can't really, like, talk for, like, a different school like UBC. I don't really know what that's like, but I have really liked all my professors, and I do think that they're really passionate about what they talk about. So if you want to be in an environment where you want to learn what your program's about, then I do think it's a really great school to go for that.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, being in a little bit smaller community too, I would think that it's a stronger family sense. Possibly a better transition or easier transitions for students who have come from a smaller school where you have that extra support, you are in smaller class sizes, and you really get to study the program that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the best spot to study on SFU's campus?
Um, I mean, I love Starbucks, so I love studying there, but if I were to say, like, a non like, oh, I feel like every school has a Starbucks, there's something called our student union building, and there's, like, floors on the very top, and they look over, like, a bunch of trees and, like, the city skyline, so you can see all the Burnaby Mountains on one side. You can see the Burnaby Mountains on one side, and you can see the city buildings on the other, which is really pretty, so I would say there.
Okay. And the best place to grab some food, whether it's on campus or nearby?
I kinda just lived at the dining hall, That was their food there, it was really good, and then there's also a cafe that's, like, owned by a family in one of our main buildings called the Renaissance Coffee Cafe, and it was really they have a lot of really good food there as well.
Okay. Now, how often, in terms of if you want to go into the city, how how challenging is that? Do you have like a bus pass? Do people go into the city often? How does that work?
Yeah, so every student gets, like, a U-Pass or a U-Compass card included in their tuition, and it's really easy to take a bus downtown. I would go downtown, or I would get on, like, the Expo, or it's really easy. There's, just, like, a main transportation center, which I would say is probably, like, 5 to 10 minutes away from the dorm buildings, which is probably where most people, if they needed to get downtown than they would be in a dorm. That's like a 5 to 10-minute walk, and then you just get on, like, this one bus called the R5 if you're trying to go downtown, and it takes you straight downtown, and it's like a rapid bus, so they don't make as many stops. So you can probably get downtown in around less than an hour, which is pretty decent considering you are in Burnaby.
Okay. Now, last question. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think somebody either thinking about SFU or coming to SFU should know about before they arrive on campus?
I would say that it definitely it definitely rains a lot, but so I would say be maybe cautious about the weather. But if you're that's, like, one thing. But if you're really passionate about criminology specifically, that I really do think it's a great program, and, even if we get a lot of rep for our school looking a lot like a prison, but I would say that it's actually it doesn't look like a prison to me, but, it's actually quite beautiful up there, and so you're in a beautiful place studying things that you want to study, then I do think it's a great school for them to go to.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And I was there over the fall, and in terms of the prison, there is a lot of concrete, but it is so beautiful. And the view when it's not raining, it is
Yeah.
such a beautiful view. So, Addison, thank you so much for all of this. I know it's going to be really helpful for our listeners. I wish you the best of luck next year, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Top Shelf EDU, your inside look at the university experience. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone exploring their path to higher education. We'll be back with more insights, stories, and advice to help you navigate your journey. See you next time.